Hello, everybody. All right, so welcome to the Mikestand, everybody. Your place for current events in the world of what is traditionally considered niche. Of course, the things that we look at, of course, are anime, cartoons, comics, manga, and pro wrestling. If you guys haven't already, if you can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and/or ask questions. We'll try to I'll try to answer the question to the best of my ability. So before we get started, of course, we're gonna give a couple minutes here at least to give people a chance to come in. Of course, in that time, feel free to said comment and/or ask questions. Um, you know, Basically the whole point of the channel here is to try to build community on some more positive things to talk about. Things that not just the current day of some of these topics we talk about, but also the past. Looking back to stuff we grew up on. Um, Anime, cartoons, comic, manga, pro wrestling. Many of us grew up. Some of us grew up watching Tsunami when it was first on, some of us are a little even older. Even remember getting up to yeah. Hey Danny, Daniel D, old friend from high school. What's up? How have you been? All right. Just been doing this the last 5 years. I've had the channel for like since 2013, but didn't start uploading stuff until 2019. Was covering initially, when the whole thing with voice actor Vic Mignogna was coming out, and then I figured I wanted to put my 2 cents in, so I just started uploading content. I've been doing a live show for the last few years, probably for the last I don't know 3-4 years or so. The Mikestand here. We cover basically what is traditionally considered niche, even though nowadays a lot of this stuff is more mainstream. So like anime, cartoons, comics, manga, pro wrestling. Monday to Thursday, I go over news articles in those areas, do a wrestling wrap up, and then this day in niche history segment, kind of like a this day in history segment, just focusing more on the niche topics. Fridays we have what I call a historical comic retrospect, where with a co-host we go back, read over old comics, comment on it. It's like one part comic book review, one part dramatic reading. So, and then on Sundays we have a panel show where we just talk about whatever comes to mind. So glad you're here, Danny. Hope you'll stick around and check out the show. You know, let's see. We're now past 4 minutes here, so I guess it's a good time to talk about what we're going to talk about tonight. So our main topic tonight, we're going to focus in on the story we've been kind of covering the past, that's been kind of off and on the past couple of months. Following up a story on comic book writer Neil Gaiman, who is, yeah, yeah. Neil Gaiman has been accused of sexual assault in the past, and we've been kind of following that story. I'm going to, of course, be going over an article from Bleeding Fool tonight. Their comics news site. Then, of course, afterwards we'll have the wrestling wrap up, where we're going to talk, of course, big weekend in wrestling, as of course a number of organizations are having some big events. TNA has Emergence tomorrow. Then on Saturday, WWE has the Bash in Berlin. What they're calling now premium live events, and then also the NWA, which is still active these days, the National Wrestling as owned and operated now by Billy Corgan of Smashing Pumpkins fame. They'll be having their 76th anniversary show coming up Saturday as well from the 2300 Arena in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, formerly known as the ECW Arena. So with all that being said, why don't we go ahead and get started? As I said, if you haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we get some more friendly people in here to engage. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. We'll try to answer the questions to the best of our ability. So with all that being said, why don't we go ahead and get started then? So, here we go. Alrighty then. So here we go. More allegations of sexual assault against Neil Gaiman surface. Article by Todd Fisher. Published August 29th. Published today, basically. So, master the allegations against Neil Gaiman. Now, Neil Gaiman, for those of you who don't know, he was the one who was writing the Sandman. He was writing the stories for the Sandman comics that Vertigo was putting out for DC back in the 90s. That's what that, and I think there was another character he created that they were just talking about last time we went over an article that was actually made into a movie. But, basically over the past few months here, there have been some accusations coming out against him from a number of women who have claimed that he had sexually assaulted them. So, anyways, let's go through the article here. Although numerous women have come forward with accounts of sexual abuse and misconduct by critically acclaimed writer Neil Gaiman, the mainstream media has still largely ignored the issue, although some outlets have finally begun to catch up. Thus far, as many as 6 women have accused the renowned author of sexual assault. These allegations began with an investigative podcast by Tortoise, a journalism outlet known for its thorough reporting. The first two accusers claimed that Gaiman sexually assaulted them, with one being his child's nanny at the time. Gaiman dismissed the allegations, describing the incident as merely cuddling in a bathtub. So, yeah, and at least the first 2 accusations, one of them was in a bathtub, and another one, it was said that the woman actually did give consent initially, and then rescinded the consent when he apparently got rough, and she did not like that part of it. So that was he apparently she in one of the cases the woman did initially give consent until he got kind of rough. So for those of you who don't know the background on the story. Subsequently, a third woman eventually shared her therapy session detailing years of manipulation by Gaiman. Tortoise then revealed 2 more accusers with similar stories. The most disturbing allegation came from a woman who claimed that Gaiman blackmailed her into performing sexual acts in exchange for housing on his New York estate for her and her 3 daughters. Now, on that, if that is true, remember these are allegations. Nothing's been proven, albeit at least in one of the accusations, right? In one of the accusations, it is currently being investigated. I guess an assault that happened, that an alleged assault, let's keep everything, fact here. Everything right now is accusation, allegation. Nothing's been proven. He hasn't been convicted in a court of law. You know, so you know, so right now it is just allegations and accusations, mind you, and these are accusations that are from stuff that happened 20, 30, 40 years ago. All right, so bear that in mind before passing any judgments on either party. Let's see. And just so we're clear, if he did in fact do this one, where he blackmailed the woman for sexual acts, basically threatening to evict her from his home if she did not comply, that is a schemy thing to do. The thing is, though, what you have to understand is, even though that is kind of schemy, she still ultimately made the choice to comply. She could have got out of the situation. She could have, now granted, maybe going to a shelter or going someplace else may not have been the best for her or her kids. If she went to like a shelter or something like that, she might have even been in more danger, more things happening. But still, first off, it's scummy to do that kind of thing. It's scummy. It's very scum. It's, if you're a man and you do that, okay, you're a scumbag. Okay, society will judge you a scumbag for that. Okay, granted, I know it is a bit of a power fantasy for some people, but if you do that to a woman, you're a scumbag. If you threaten to throw her out, if she won't, if she won't, if she won't, play with you, as it were, you're a scumbag. That's basically assault by coercion, and that's just as wrong as if you outright physically forced yourself on somebody. So, anyways, moving on to the rest of the article here. So, finally, a former massage therapist of Amanda Palmer, Gaiman's former wife, who was very public that they had an quote-unquote open marriage, accused him of flashing her during an appointment and implied a manipulative, intimate relationship. Now, on that one's kind of that one's flashing. It's not, as granted, nobody wants to. I'm sure nobody wants to see somebody's stuff like that, but and he said, let's see, no Rick again. Well, again, Rick doesn't come every night. I have him on a couple of times, a couple of nights a week. You should think about firing. He's not. He does this voluntarily. Okay, firing him. Oh, brother. Yeah, you're a kid over there. Good night, Spoon. Let's see. Now, according to Fandom Pulse, an 8-month-old Reddit post has just discovered that revealed another disturbing story about the Sandman creator's wild behavior and his refusal to take responsibility for his offenses, blaming the drug Ambien. A person who shall not be named reports a post was made asking, quote, "What celebrity rumor did you hear privately long before the news broke?" Unquote. To which someone mentioned Neil Gaiman's work writing for Doctor Who under showrunner Stephen Moffat, which occurred for 2 episodes airing in 2011-2013. Another commenter added, quote, finally a wholesome rumor, unquote. Another commenter said, quote, I said his name and got nervous. Oh no, not him too. Oh foo, unquote. Then a Redditor with the username Ellie Geisler dropped the bombshell. Quote, unfortunately, yes, him too. A friend of a friend stayed overnight in his house, and he warned her that he might wander on Ambien. A friend of a friend. Now, that's always a good source, right, people? A friend of a friend. This is the problem. It's kind of the problem with the whole Me Too movement and, listen and believe without no proof, right? People are going to assume the worst in you over allegations. It's stupid. Okay? That's why we have laws. That's why we have a court of law to evaluate and determine if what's being said is true or not. But a friend of a friend, you know what they call that in court? You know what they call that in court? Hearsay, which is usually inadmissible. All right? So this accusation already is starting to sound a little fishy. Did he ask for the day off? No. Okay, here's the thing, Good Egg Spoon. All right. I only ask him to come on Mondays and Wednesdays, partly because I don't want, even though he's pretty cool about it, I don't want to risk burning him out. Like I did with a previous co-host I had, where the pressure just got to. I don't want to risk having anybody burn out on me, right? Where they feel like they're just so that's why I don't have them on every night I could. I don't like after having one co-host for a lot of things for a while there. I realized that I don't want them risk them burning out. Also, I don't have him on Tuesday nights because, of course, he's got his show right after, and he's got to still get ready for a show. So, so he'd either have to leave early anyways for my show to go prepare his. And Danny, I know what we're talking about is I have, one of the other YouTubers I know, his name's Rick. I have him come on and co-host some of my news segments too. But just in case you're wondering about what we're talking about here. But anyways, let me see these comments here. Let me see the newer comments here. I was answering ones the more. Let's see. Dang, it's hard to meet women when others ruin it for other men, to step up. Yeah, I mean, well, something, Danny? I agree with that because it's hard because it's like now they're unfortunately the way they've probably got everybody trained in society now. If you even ask a woman out, she'll cry assault or harassment. You can't even innocently ask a girl out without risking them taking it as you're harassing me or you're bothering me. I mean, okay, I get the point of if you ask her once and she says no, then you should just leave it be and move on. or or if you really like her, maybe you know don't rush into get to know her first, and then ask her out, and if and then but at least try to build a relationship. If she's not interested in even building a friendship, just move on. But that's the problem with our society right now, where they made it to where guys have to be totally gun shy around women because they could take the most innocently innocuous comment and turn it into, oh my God, you're harassing me. Oh my God, you're stalking me. Oh my God, you're assaulted me. The hyperbole is ridiculous. Let's see. Let's see. No call, no show. Seems like a good reason. Like, he's not on hire. Good night, Spoon. Oh boy. Oh brother. Yeah, exactly. Um, Trained. Uh-huh. You know. So, anyways, moving on with the article here. Then a redditor. Oh wait, yeah. Actually, we read that part. Let's see. Wander on eight. Okay. She woke up to find him in a room, and she didn't go into specifics, but she was upset, and it was implied that he was groping her. She didn't want to hurt her career, so she never shared it publicly. I'm just waiting for something worse to eventually come out about him. Don't pin your hopes on him being a squeaky clean guy. Unquote. Yeah, I mean, again, I would, since that's a friend of a friend, that's not a very solid source right there. You know, that's in court they'd call that hearsay, and it wouldn't be admissible in court. Okay, it's the whole idea. Oh well, because we say it, it's true. Never mind that even in the Bible, there was the old story of Potiphar's wife. If any of you have read the Bible, the story of Joseph and when he was sold into slavery by his brothers, and he was a servant of Potiphar. His wife took an interest in, Potiphar's wife took an interest in Joseph. She tried to get him to be with her. He tried to very politely and like understanding his place of being a humble servant. He was said, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And then she turns around and accuses him of assaulting her. All right. So it's been throughout history where where women have, women all the way going back to the dawn of time, women causing the downfall of men. But yeah. So and I mean they are right that guys are not necessarily squeaky clean either. However, we're all capable of sin. We're all capable of evil, men and women. Okay, men and women are capable of evil. So just try to like pit one side, like one side is the angels, the other side is the demons, and in that particular sense is kind of ridiculous. Yeah, man. Today's um Saki society. Wow. Yeah. So okay. So moving on with the article here. Nice hair, or nice hair 8592 added, quote, his wife too. I had a very weird foursome with her back in the early 2000s when the Dresden Dolls hadn't hit it big yet. I'm guessing Dresden Dolls may be a book he wrote or something like that. Odd both in content and that she specifically wanted all young and young-looking boys. Feels very different now that that I'm older. Yeah, sometimes these people come out of the woodworks to, and now Gaiman is a pretty well-known name in the comics industry. So so the whole idea that oh, they're just accusing him or piling on him to try to try to extort money from him, or because to be accused of something like that is a very damning thing, right? And even if it does prove to be untrue, it still has some repercussions. And we, for those who watched the channel for a while, we've talked about some stories where that's happened. We talked about the comic book artist a few months back who ended up committing suicide because he was accused of being inappropriate with a underage girl, and nothing of it really was, you know, um, one of the things that got me all started here was accusations they were putting out against Vic Mignogna, and it turned out in reality it was more like they were just saying that stuff because they didn't like the fact that he was a conservative Christian and they were all pretty much liberals. They didn't like the fact that he was getting a director's position at the company he was working at. Who did that? What you mean commit suicide? If you're talking about the one who committed suicide, let's see. And we covered it. We covered he's from Philadelphia. I don't remember the guy's name off the top of my head right now. Um but his family even came out against the people who were like, kind of damning him, for it. So I just yes. Yeah, I don't remember the guy's name. I know he was from Pittsburgh. I do remember that. Basically, he's the guy who I guess this one girl had looked at him as like a mentor, and he had said that if she's ever in town, she can go, she can stay at his place. I think he meant it innocently, but she basically made it sound like it was something more than that, and people were all over him because she was underage when he supposedly said that, So I think she was 16 or 17 when he told her that, basically he died earlier this year. I just was it the CG guy? Was it a CG guy or a real person? Well, CG guys, if you mean Comicsgate, they're all real people. All right. As I understand it, this guy, I don't know if he was affiliated with Comicsgate though. But yeah, I don't remember the guy's name, but we had actually covered him before, so it's been a couple months, a few months since we last had since there was any news on anything. So I think his family was planning on suing the people who were like. I know he did get an award this year at some comics awards. Um, you know what I mean? Professional comics people versus aspiring comics people. Oh, he was a professional. He was somewhat known in the industry. So, anyways, getting back to the article here. Hopefully, these disclosures will eventually help to guarantee that Gaiman is held accountable for his actions, as well as for his desire to investigate the quote unquote gray area of consent, which so often prevents police, courts, and other media outlets from assisting survivors in any meaningful way. Well, again, and as I said, at least in one of the cases, the woman did actually initially give consent, and then when now, Grant, maybe consent should be further defined by maybe people should be like being totally upfront with what they want to do when they are trying to get consent for something like that. That would probably keep a lot of the stuff from getting out of hand like this. Because there's more ways to be intimate than just simply by engaging in intercourse. Okay? And some people, are into those other things, other people are not, So, communication is always important, no matter what area of life you're talking about. Being clear on what you're on the message, being clear on what you're saying is absolutely important. That doesn't just apply to intimate relationships. It applies to everything in life. This should apply to conversations regarding anything and everything. Being clear and to the point. Fans of Gaiman and or critics of Tortoise may wish to focus on the messengers of this disturbing news, but the major story is here that Neil Gaiman is being credibly accused of sexually exploiting multiple young women, and this could still be only the beginning. Now, now let me just remind everybody a couple things, though. Thus far, most of the accusations are from years past. Most of the accusations we've heard thus far are from as recent as 20 years ago to as distant as 40 years ago. Okay? And I know there's a lot of Me Too people that, well, they were just afraid to come forward because they didn't think they'd be believed, or they didn't think they'd be, well, that's why when you make the report to the police when it happens, you don't like if you are, and I'm not saying that people who are legitimate, the problem is that people who are legitimately assaulted suffer too, because the people who are legitimately assaulted versus those who just say they're assaulted for personal gain, okay? The ones who are saying it for personal gain or because they're trying to get back, or what have you, they ruin it for everybody. They ruin it for the victims, the actual victims, because people are less likely to believe them, because you see all these examples of women out there making these accusations, trying to and I pointed out even from the Bible, Potiphar's wife, for example, but it's kind of like also the boy cried wolf, right? He cried wolf so many times that people just stopped believing him. And unfortunately, real victims of sexual assault and rape have to unfortunately suffer the consequences of other people's bad behavior. And there's the other point that Danny brought up earlier about the idea it makes it hard for men to actually try to have a relationship with a woman, because now they got to worry about if they don't get to know the woman enough, will the woman turn around and accuse them of something that they didn't actually do or intend, right? Where we've gotten to such a point where it's become so. Yeah. That's who I was talking about. Ed Piscor. That's who I was talking. Thank you, Good Night Spoon. Thank you for that. So I vaguely remember the story. Ed Piscor was the one we were talking about. You ever watch Dr. Kirk? No, I haven't. Let's see. Danny's saying that's gotta be weird because if you're not a celebrity, then I remember back in around 93 or 96, a Florida State kicker was video recording his sex activity to prove he had consent to get it on. Yeah, I mean, sometimes that happens too because celebrities in particular have to be, people in power, celebrities, people in power, people who are rich, they have to be even more careful because you know anytime you show weakness, that unfortunately going to be somebody who's out there is going to be looking to to basically exploit your weaknesses. Okay, so let's say you're somebody who's rich, a woman, may say, well, if you don't give me this amount of money, then I'm going to tell everybody you assaulted me, you raped me, you know. And yes, that kind of thing does happen. That kind of thing does happen. And the problem with that, when you have stuff like that happen, then when you do actually have somebody who legitimately did get assaulted, people aren't going to believe them because the first thing that's going to come to mind is some of these people who said that they were assaulted and weren't, and they're not going to be believed. Let's see, like Corey Feldman, he's a psychologist or something, but he makes a valid point of treating disputes like you're on the radio. Repeat back your understanding of their grievance and ask if you understand them. Oh, you mean going back to my communication point? Yeah. That it's always a good thing to do. Good night, Spoon. Regarding your statement on communication issues, clarity. Yeah, right. Because the whole idea here is now maybe this is just because I'm on the spectrum and I know there's a million different ways you can interpret anything done or said. So maybe that's just me being a little more, making absolutely sure that I understand before I proceed so I don't get into trouble. So I don't have a misunderstanding. That's why communication clarity is important, right? And again, a friendly reminder to you guys, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, then we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the question the best of my ability. So, let's see. You're on the spectrum? Yeah, I'm autistic. I'm on the spectrum, meaning I'm autistic. It's some people would call it more of a milder form of autism, but but yeah, that's one of my diagnoses. But with that, that's the only article that we're gonna do tonight. So I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the wrestling wrap up. As I said earlier, there's quite a few things going on over the weekend here that we are gonna talk about here. We'll actually start with TNA because tonight's TNA, of course, is the go home. Tonight's Impact, as it were, is the go home Impact before tomorrow night's Emergence event. And on tonight's Impact on Access, on the Access channel on your cable systems, TNA, of course, coming from the Florida State Fairgrounds in Tampa, Florida. Mike Bailey defends the TNA X Division title against Rich Swann, which Mike Bailey will have his tag team partner Trent Seven in his corner, while Swann has his tag team partner AJ Francis in his. Brian Myers of the System with Alicia and Eddie Edwards, his corner, will be taking on Joe Hendry in a one-on-one match. Eric Young will be taking on Hammerstone. Eddie Edwards will be taking on Mike Santana in a match for the TNA World Tag Team titles. The team of ABC of Ace Austin and Chris Bay will be defending those titles against Cody Deaner and Jake Something. And in a knockout world title match, in a match by elegance match, which I have no idea what that is, Jordan Grace defends the TNA knockout world title against Ash by Elegance. So that's happening tonight on the Go Home Impact before tomorrow night's Emergence. We're going to talk a little bit about what's ahead on Emergence. What will be on Emergence, since we won't be talking about it tomorrow night, as it were. So I'm going to mention what's going to be going down at Emergence tomorrow night. So, but before I do that, of course, let me also, I guess there's just one more comment. There's a good chance most people are on the spectrum, at least significantly more than it may appear. Yeah. Well, I was actually diagnosed originally, when I was, just after I was born. So I was diagnosed very young. I was initially diagnosed with mild autism. Then later in life, it was Asperger's, and then it went back to being mild autism. So, anyways, on tomorrow night's Emergence, coming from, of course, the old Foresters Parish Town Hall in Louisville, Kentucky. On the countdown to Emergence, Frankie Kazarian will be taking on Kushida. And then on the main show itself, Eric Young will be taking on Steve Macklin. The Hardy Boys, team with Joe Hendry and Mike Santana, take on the System of former TNA Knockouts World Champion Moose, Eddie Edwards, JDC, Johnny Damon Curtis, and Brian Myers. In a 6-woman tag team match, TNA Knockouts champion Jordan Grace teams with former Knockouts tag team champions Spitfire, Danny Luna, and Jody Threat to take on Ash by Elegance and current Knockouts tag team champions, the Militia of Alicia Edwards and Masha Slamovich, with the personal concierge in their corner. PCO takes on Matt Cardona in an Ultimate X match for the TNA X Division title. Mike Bailey defends against Laredo Kid, Hammerstone, Zachary Wentz, Riley Osborne, and Jason Hotch. And the main event for the TNA World title, we'll see in an Iron Man match, which is a 60... Okay, so going back to the Ultimate X match, for those of you who don't know, an Ultimate X match is a match in which they have 2 cables that cross each other over the center of the ring. And at the center point of that X, as it were, they'll usually hang some kind of trophy. In this case, it'll be the X Division title. Person to climb up there and to get hold of the in this case, the title and bring it down, wins the match. So a lot of times the X division is much like what the old cruiserweight. It's just instead of there's no weight limits here. There's what they call no limits. So you can have guys who are like Harrison's a pretty big guy, but it's supposed to celebrate just the natural athleticism of the X division. So and then and then an Iron Man match, 60. That's a 60-minute match in which the winner of the most falls in that time limit is the winner of the match. Nick Nemeth is defending the TNA World Title against Josh Alexander after, of course, they had a 30-minute match recently on Impact in which they came to a draw. So, anyways, I guess your parents love you. Well, I would say so, because I came from a generation where people would rather their children suffer than let the public think that there's something wrong with them. I mean, what are you? What 70 or 80 years old or something like that? Because I'm 48. Okay. Now, Grant, I know things have changed since in my lifetime. Like when I was growing up, I was actually, when I was growing up, I was for a good chunk of my elementary years. It wasn't until 7th grade that I was actually finally completely mainstreamed. But at the time when I was growing up back in the 80s, I was being mainstreamed a little bit at a time. I initially was in what they would call an SDC environment today, where I was basically in a classroom with other, and there were a few of us, we were kind of mixed in. There were some who were pretty severe, and there were those of us who weren't as severe or weren't as bad off. I mean, if I was going to school today, I'd have probably had a one-on-one aide with me. But yeah, my dad always encouraged me to, you know, my dad wasn't even overly thrilled at some of the doctors. I remember my dad. I guess when I guess when I guess the doctors were testing me, testing my abilities and stuff like that. My dad would like. I think there was one where a doctor, it's one of those. Okay, show your child the picture and have your child tell you, well, what the picture is, right? So, and I guess I said something. The doctor wrote something, and my dad didn't, So, and my dad realized that it was supposed to be a key. So, hey, Mike, and then he pulled out his keys and Mike, what's this? What's this? And I said keys, and then the doctor had to like, oh, so. The thing with me though, it's funny because in terms of my ability to speak, I actually developed kind of later in life. I didn't start speaking as far from what I remember, from what I was told, till I was like maybe four, maybe like 3 or 4, but there were a lot of low expectations for me to begin with. I'm definitely younger than you, but there was definitely a stigmatism around autism. Well, this isn't the same, but anything to do with mental health issues as well. And that continues to this day. I wouldn't say as much. I mean, if you're younger than me, I can see there might be some areas of here in the States and some parts of the world where, yeah, you're probably right, where sometimes culturally it's harder to acknowledge when your child may have issues. And there are some parents out there who don't want to accept their child had issues. But my dad knew I was smarter. When I was born, right, there was at least one doctor who said I'd be doing good to be able to tie my own shoes and feed myself. That was what was most expected of me, is I could, that doctor would not have thought that I'd be doing my own YouTube channel here. Okay. Not to say that I've had a easy road of it or anything like that, but you know, sometimes the expectations were not as high for me. My dad could see it because even when I still couldn't speak, he could tell that I was smart. I was smarter than people were realizing, just because I couldn't speak, initially, and it took me a little longer to learn how to speak. All right. Aside, of course, from the autism, I also have a mild form of cerebral palsy on my left side, and I have a club foot on my right. So it's not that it's not that I have one big glowing disability that's obvious. I have three milder disabilities, and in their combined form, create a greater disability. So everyone I know pretends they're normal, and their kids are clearly have developmental delays, um, are being disregarded because they feel it would be a blight on their image. Um, well, I'm going to ask something here, Goodnight Spoon. And you don't necessarily have to answer this if you don't want to. You don't necessarily have to answer this. I would understand, because it may delve into kind of a privacy issue here. But without going into super, I mean, you can just tell me, like, at most, maybe country or whatever, country or city. You can go as low as city. Where exactly are you from? Where exactly are you from? Where's your reference point here? My nephew is like that. He isn't speaking yet, but he tests extremely high and everything else. Not sure what the tests are exactly. Mass, Massachusetts. Okay. Um. Again, what city in Massachusetts, if you don't mind me, if you don't want to give that information, I understand. I'm not trying to, but I'm just trying to get an idea of, like, where you possibly lived, or where, because what kind of community you live in. But if Rick asks, I'm from Guatemala. Yeah, because I could maybe understand that. Let's say, like, based on what you're saying, I could understand it if it's in a more up and maybe more of the more affluent areas, of, because sometimes people who are kind of, a little bit more affluent, a little more rich, yeah, they don't want to have to acknowledge, you know that situation. Okay, if they're now, and there are some at the other end too, more rural people who might be a bit more. But I think nowadays most people, your average person, understands what a lot of disabilities and mental health issues are. You know. So, anyways, I would rather not get that specific, because there's a crazy person in this community that lives really close to me, and I don't want them to find All right. I mean, I understand that. I wasn't necessarily trying to pry or cause any problems there. For me, I was just trying to, as I said, because different communities have different situations. Based on what you're saying, though, it sounds more like you might be from more of a upper middle class to more affluent community. Which, yes, they may want to present everything as perfectly normal, and keep a lot of those issues, keep maybe you know, whatever downers there are, more private, you know, but, but anyways, let me get back to the wrestling wrap up here. So, anyways, so now going into tomorrow night, of course, there are a couple of oh, actually, there is one more thing that I could talk about before I go into those. Of course, last night's Dynamite. Let me go over that real quick here. So the result from last night's Dynamite. So in the opening match, Adam Page defeated Tomohiro. Now a couple other things happened on the show last night too. Jon Moxley made his return to AEW after being away for a couple months, and left a very cryptic message for Tony Schiavone there in the ring, saying this company is no longer yours. Now, how that all plays out, and then Bryan Danielson and coming out to celebrating his title victory and his continuation of his career for a little while longer. Basically indicated that once he does give up the title, his full-time wrestling career will be over. But he's going to at least stick around full-time for a little longer now while he was, to hold the title for a while. And the next person to apparently try to challenge him right now in the immediate future apparently will be Jack Perry, who's the current TBS champion. But anyways, back to the match there. Adam Page defeated Tomohiro Ishii. And then was confronted by Swerve Strickland after the match, as these two have had a very heated rivalry for the last year or so. And after this confrontation, they've now signed a match at All Out on September 7th to face each other in a steel cage to kind of negate any outside interference. Making her in-ring return after about a year, recovering from a shoulder injury, Jamie Hayter defeated Harley Cameron just over 3 minutes, who had Saraya in her corner. In an 8-man tag match, FTW champion Hook teamed with the conglomeration trio of Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, and Kyle O'Reilly to defeat Roderick Strong and the Learning Tree trio of Big Bill, Chris Jericho, and Brian Keith. And the main event saw Ricochet make his in-ring debut against Kyle Fletcher, in which he won that match. And after the match, Will Ospreay came out on the ramp, and initially, of course, Ospreay was one of the guys who was trying to get Ricochet to sign with AEW because they've had a history where they've had some matches over in Japan. So they were looking to set that up, only for but Pac, who basically is eyeing Will Ospreay's international title, came out and attacked him and talked to Ricochet. kind of trash talk to Ricochet. Set that up. But anyway, let's see. I still have a couple of things to go, but let me see these comments here. Let's see. I'm not personally upper middle class, but people around me definitely are. Have you ever tried getting a traditional job? I've had traditional jobs, and for one reason or another, haven't lasted. That's why I'm on disability. I didn't just go right on disability when I turned 18. I went to college a little bit. I did try getting more traditional jobs. Worked at a few gas stations. I've worked at Baskin Robbins. I worked at a swap meet. Essentially, I was usually either I was let go because they felt I couldn't do the job, or you know, and it wasn't that I wasn't for lack of trying. It was just that certain circumstances just made it more difficult. So, not intending to be insulting, if that's how it comes off, but you appear to have skills and would be useful to employers. Um, more of my strengths are more in my thought process. Like my gross motor skills are okay, but like for example, I told you I worked at Baskin Robbins for a while there. There was a Baskin Robbins in my hometown here that I worked for about a couple months. I was let go after a couple months because what was happening was um, my fine motor skills were not that strong. My my boss liked the fact I was a good on the cleaning and maintenance side of things. He liked I was very good at that stuff. But like when it came to making the actual stuff for when it came to making stuff for customers, I've what I was told, I didn't necessarily notice this myself, but what I was told was that there were some customers, if I had helped them before and they saw that I was going to help them again, there were some customers who would actually just turn around and leave. Because supposedly I was too slow in how I would make the stuff. So it's some stuff like that. Because my fine motor skills are a little bit more problematic for me than my gross motor skills. So I would put you in data analysis, pattern recognition, and organization stuff. Yeah, that probably would be more my strength because, like, I'm good. I'm good in social situations with people. It's just that when it comes to dealing with people, like I was told by a couple of coworkers that I'm probably not the best when it comes to dealing with customers. Um, you know, I'm just not that way. So, you know, but even in some of the jobs you're talking about, those are not high paying jobs, anyways. Basically, what it got down to is, I was actually in services when I was a kid, right? In California here, we have companies that they have basically companies called regional centers that will help disabled people, get services and get help, what have you. I was, basically I was trying to do everything on my own until I was like 32. I was 225 pounds. I had a blood pressure of 165 over 107. So, I was somebody they felt did legitimately need the help. and I wasn't getting the help because I was trying to do everything on my own. I was in the system before, and then I had a caseworker who really got me back into the system. So I had one customer service job, and I was fired after the first day. Plus, at this point in my life, I'm like 48 years old, so me going around trying to get entry level jobs in the hopes of getting promoted, I don't really see that happening. So anyways, enough about my past here. Let's get back to the content here. So anyways, as we just talked about AEW. Now let's talk a little bit about, of course, the two big events coming up this weekend in the WWE and NWA. As Bash at Berlin is I believe, this Saturday. Both of these next two events we're going to talk about are this Saturday. Bash at Berlin, and then the 76th anniversary show for the NWA coming up this weekend. So at the Bash at Berlin show this Saturday, the WWE Women's Tag Team titles will be on the line as the champions, the Unholy Union of Isla Dawn and Alba Fire, will be defending against former champ Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill. In a mixed tag team match, the Terror Twins of Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley, the former World and Women's World champions respectively, will be taking on their former Judgment Day teammates of Liv Morgan and Dominic Mysterio. In a strap match, CM Punk takes on Drew McIntyre. In a match for the WWE World Heavyweight title, Gunther defends the WWF World Heavyweight title against Randy Orton. In a match for the WWE and WWE Universal titles, Cody Rhodes will be defending against Kevin Owens. So that's happening in Berlin on Saturday here. And also on Saturday in Philadelphia, who we were talking about earlier, NWA will be holding its 76th anniversary show there. As I get to that. So at the 2300 Arena, which formerly the ECW Arena in Philadelphia, signed on the card. There are a number of matches that were signed on the card, including in what you might call a midgets match, a midgets match, or a very dwarf match, I guess. Rolando will be taking on Eric Smalls. Kobe Carino is set to take on Silas Mason. The non-title match, Women's World Television Champion Maxie Impaler takes on Women's World Champion Kenzie Page. In a four-way match, you have Burchill taking on Brian Idol, and they are also taking on Mims and Carson Drake. In a non-title Liberty Bell Brawl tag team match, the current NWA World Tag Team Champion Blunt Force Trauma will be taking on former United States Tag Team Champions Immortals, Blunt Force Trauma of Carnage and Damage. Darren Stevens in their corner, taking on the Immortals of Kratos and Odinson. In a number one contendership match for the World Junior Heavyweight title, Alex Misery takes on Jack Cartwheel. Another tag team match, both former world champions of Jack Dean and Baron Von Storm will be taking on Jake Dumas and Zion, who will have Austin Idol in their corner. Knox and Murdoch, Mike Knox and Trevor Murdoch, will be taking on Southern Six duo of Kerry Morton and Alex Taylor. In a match for the women's world tag team titles, the King Bees of Danny B and Charity King, the current champions, will be defending the titles against the It Girls of Ella Envy and Miss Star. Miss Samantha Star, of course, the daughter of Baby Doll and Sam Houston. And in a four-way match for the NWA United States tag team titles, the champions, Daisy Kill and Taos, with Vampiro in their corner, will be taking on former champs, the Fixers, Jay Bradley and Regan Bolagursky. Also, the Slime Balls of Sage Chance and Tommy Rant, and the Country Gentleman duo of the Kazana brothers, AJ and Casey Kazana, with Joe Kazana in their corner. Also, the current NWA JCP Southeastern Tag Team Champion. Another non-title match, NWA World Champion EC3 will be taking on National Champion Tom Latimer. So with that being said, I'm not suggesting you upend your life, but I wanted to point out you do seem to have assets that you could probably get a data-related job should you ever want to. Well, I feel at this point, what I am, let's just say that I am exploring a couple of options to try to, I'm currently on disability. I do get a SSI and Social Security check that do help me to live a reasonable life. I've got a couple of paths I'm focusing on, this being one of them, developing my YouTube channel. Eventually, someday, maybe I can get monetized and start getting super chats, make money that way. Of course, I got to get more people to subscribe and to watch, but at the same time, I'm not just going to start. I'm going to go with what I know and what I want to cover. I'm not going to do like other YouTubers you've seen and just cover the big, cover like mainstream Hollywood, just watch a whole bunch of people fall on their face just because everybody else thinks it's funny to watch people fall on their face. Not my style. I consider this my occupation. It's not a job because I'm not making money with it yet. Hopefully I will someday. But anyways, let's finish up the show here. I should rephrase, it's nice to have a reason to get out of the house sometimes. I get out of that. Anyways, this is not really a conversation that's meant to be on. we delved into way too much here. All right. The whole point of this channel is to talk more about, I don't mind, letting people in on my life and what's going on with it, but at the same time, it's not meant for a deep discussion. Okay? And granted, it's partly my fault for letting it get to that point, but let's just nix it now here. Let's just get back to, I'm about to finish the show here. I'm about to do This Day in Niche History. So, with today being Thursday, August 29th, Roger Dodger. Okay. Well, today being Thursday, August 29th, 2024, let's take a look back at this day in niche history. So let me just take a quick peek here. 1994, 2009, and 2014. All right, so first off, we're going to head back 30 years ago. And on this date, 30 years ago today, On this date, 30 years ago today, back in 1994, the fifth and final issue of Dogs of War from Defiant Comics went on sale on this date back in 1994. It sold for $2.50 with 32 pages. A Hunter's Moon was the name of the story, as written by Art Holcomb, penciled by George Ginty, inked by Michael Barrero, lettered by Diana Reed, and colored by Cornelia Adams. So, with that, we'll move on to the next. So, on this date, 1994, the fifth and final issue of Defiant's Dogs of War went on sale on this date 30 years ago today. Cool. Anyways, moving on to the next piece in each history. Danny, I'm glad you're still here watching. I hope you've been enjoying the show. And granted, a little more personal drama on here than I intended for it to be, but sometimes that just happens. Anyways, moving on to the next piece of niche history, as 1994 is just so nice that we're gonna hit it twice. As also on this date 30 years ago today in 1994. Of course, 2 days after very infamous situation with the NWA World Title, in which Shane Douglas had thrown it to the ground, denouncing NWA, as it were. NWA Eastern Championship Wrestling, the syndicated TV program of ECW, is renamed simply as ECW, with the promotion's rename to Extreme Championship Wrestling. So, as they had left the NWA to become an independent company, ECW also changed the name of their syndicated TV program from NWA Eastern Championship Wrestling to simply ECW. And the rest is history, as they say. That happened 30 years ago on this date. And then moving ahead to 2009, as on this date 15 years ago today, I bring it up here. On this day, back in 2009, Nelvana's Hot Wheels Battle Force 5 premiered on Cartoon Network and Teletoons on this date back in 2009. So 15 years ago today, the Nelvana's Hot Wheels Battle Force 5 premiered on Cartoon Network and Teletoons. Cartoon Network here in the States, Teletoons up in Canada. And finally on this date in 2014, move ahead to 2014 here, on this date 10 years ago today, as we take a look here. On this date 10 years ago today, Seven's Paradise of Innocence was released as an OVA on this date 10 years ago today. So on this date 10 years ago today, Paradise of Innocence, the OVA Paradise of Innocence, produced by Seven, premiered on this date, or was released on this date in 2014. Hold on, Jen. I'm still on my show here. Sorry, my sister just called me there, guys. But with that, I thank everybody for being here tonight. So we'll be back here tomorrow night. I'll be joined by RJ Carter of Critical Blast. I'll be joined by RJ Carter of Critical Blast. We'll be, of course, as we do every Friday, it's our historical comic retrospect, in which we look back to comics Tomorrow night we'll be continuing our look at comics that went on sale in March of 1940. Be focusing on books that went on sale from Hillman periodicals. We'll be looking at Miracle Comics, Volume 1, Issue 3, and Rocket Comics, Volume 1, Issue 3. So I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. And before I do all that, let's see. I suppose it's appropriate for me to apologize for my probing questions. Yeah, I mean, my only issue with it was that it was taking too much time away from what I really wanted to talk about. Again, some people can, even Danny, who's known me since high school, and at times I can be probably more honest than I need to be. Okay. Um, but my only issue with it, Goodnight Spoon, is it took away from what we were trying to do. So, or from what I was trying to get out there. So that's my only issue with it. But I do appreciate you wanting to apologize. But anyways, with that, guys, I thank everybody for being here. And I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.